Welcome and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. I thought that on the program today it'd be a wonderful journey for us to explore something that a lot of us have, but none of us really know maybe that much about, except for maybe the basics. And that is a part of the body known as the liver. We're going to learn about basic things that we want to know about the liver and how we can take good care of it, and just exactly what this magnificent organ does for our body. Joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today is an expert and author of the book Liver Detox, Cleansing Through Diet, Herbs, and Massage. And he is a naturopathic physician who practices out of Switzerland, and he'll explain how to detoxify, strengthen, and regenerate our liver. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guest, Christopher Vassie. Dr. Vassie, thank you for joining us here on the program today.
It's a pleasure. Hello, Danielle.
Now, tell us, first of all, how did you become interested in the liver itself and come to put this book together?
Well, when I studied naturopathy and when I practiced it, I was always very interested in all the excretory organs, that is the liver, intestines, kidneys, the skin, and the lungs. But with time, I discovered that the liver was very, very important, much more important than the other organs. In fact, it's wrong to say that one organ is better than the others because they are all very important. But the liver has many more functions than the other organs. Like the kidneys or the skin has maybe 10 or 20 different functions, but the liver has 500.
Wow.
And 500 is really a lot of things. And when the liver becomes too weak or doesn't work properly, many, many things can become really critical. So that's why I started to study more about the liver, and I thought it'd be a good idea to write a book specifically on the liver. Because as you said, many people know that we have a liver, but what does it really do? How can we harm it by our way of living? How can we help it? Well, that's not so clear anymore.
Now, it's really fascinating because, as I was saying earlier in the program, a lot of people have an idea, well, we know that the liver is a cleansing organ, but now when you talk about it has about 500 functions. Let's talk about some functions the liver has that maybe people aren't aware of that are pretty important.
Yeah, well, the liver is responsible to store sugar, glucose, in order that we have reserves when we need it. It also stores vitamins, different kinds of vitamins for the same reason, because we burn or use different vitamins, and if we don't eat them, we need a certain reserve to be able to go on. It also can produce proteins. It metabolizes the different fats and so forth. It's helpful because it produces bile, which is indispensable to be able to digest fats. And as you said, it is a very powerful organ to eliminate the toxins, but also to neutralize very harmful toxics such as heavy metal or carcinogenic substances.
Now, there seems to be a lot of information, especially in a day and age where we have things such as YouTube, where people are out there posting information and expertise. And you have to wonder sometimes how much of what we see and hear out there is actually factual. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, as anybody can put anything on internet, YouTube, and so forth. Of course, many things are not so true, are completely wrong. That's the risk, huh? And it's therefore every one of us should be very vigilant when he listens or reads things on the internet. Is it really true? And try to find websites or people he can trust, which are people who are saying interesting things and true things. because in the world of natural medicine, there are real scientific facts we can rely on, but there are also other things which are just people believe it is so, or they've heard it is so, but it's in some instances it's not really true or wrong.
I know, it's fascinating. One of the examples I have is television, for instance. You have people, doctors who have their own shows now, and you sometimes wonder about the information because as you watch a show like that, if you follow it, not say religiously, but you follow it enough, 1 year you'll hear them say one thing, and then the next year they're totally contradicting what they said the year before, and it's like, how do you know what's real anymore?
Yeah. And another problem is if it's someone who works for a firm or who is selling products, medicine, then he's interested in selling a lot, so he might lose his objectivity sometimes. But if it's someone who's got nothing to sell, well, he can be closer to the truth.
So now, getting back to the liver, what I was really astounded by was to realize how much blood flow goes through the liver. All your blood goes through this area here. This is busier than the Chicago O'Hare Airport, it sounds like.
Yes, it is. The blood enables the organs to work, and as the liver is so important, a lot of blood goes through it. Every minute, a few liters has gone through, and it's necessary for the blood, for the liver to be able to work correctly, because this blood brings it oxygen, which it needs, but also nutrients, vitamin, minerals, and so forth from the food we eat, so that it can function.
Now, I also understand, too, it's pretty much the only organ in the body that can actually rebuild itself.
Yes, it has a very big capacity to regenerate. Apparently, I have never done it, but it's possible to cut off a huge piece of the liver, and from the part which is still in the body, it will rebuild itself and take a form of the liver again, and function as a total liver again. It's true. It's something which no other organ can do. It's very specific to the liver, and probably it's because the liver is so important. If something happened, it's really indispensable that it can regenerate so that we can go on living. And that's where we see how nature is really well planned, created. It is magnificent. Very important organs have this capacity to regenerate or to defend themselves, or are very well protected, and so forth.
Now, I was told, and this was many years ago, that the liver pretty much is one of those organs that you can't live without. You can live without pretty much everything else but a liver. And I guess what was a friend of mine was trying to say is, well, think about all the things they have available now. For instance, a mechanized heart, you got lungs, you got all these things that can do these things for you, and kidneys and so forth. But the liver, it doesn't seem like they've quite replicated its function, have they?
No, and the reason for that is that the liver has so many functions. If it's just a question of having a pump, like the heart to pump the blood around, well, it's one function, to simplify one. But the liver, it's 500, so man cannot produce a machine which does all that, or the machine would be so big and it's out of the question. So, no, it's really a very precious organ.
Now, one of the things I was fascinated, and I want to let the listeners know about your book, and the book is titled Liver Detox, and this really is kind of like a really cool information guide. First of all, sort of like when you go to buy something. Let's say, I don't know, I guess a computer. I'm just trying to find the right, analogy here. As a guide, a functional guide, how it works and things you need to be aware of and how you maintenance and take care of this. And you lay it out so simply. I mean, this is a book that you can actually read in just a couple of hours and go, wow, I didn't realize all this. But it's not as complicated either in some ways, and yet it's so extremely intricate, especially as you describe how the liver, interacts with things such as the stomach and the intestines and digestion and things like that. Let's talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, well, the liver is, we were talking about the blood. 75% of the blood which reaches the liver comes from the intestines. The portal vein brings the blood which has its source in the intestines. I mean by that all the substances which are in the intestines, I mean vitamins, amino acids, and so forth, but also toxins, food additives, and so forth, are absorbed by the blood and then carried by the portal vein to the liver. And that's why there's a relation between what's happening in the intestines and what's happening in the liver. Because if the intestines walls are not in a good condition, they are porous, I mean, substances which should not enter the blood will enter it, and I'm talking here about toxins and heavy metals and all the bad stuff can come into the blood and be led to the liver. Now, the liver has a very powerful possibility to neutralize the toxics and eliminate them. But when it is already weary and tired and weak because we overeat, for example, or we eat too much fat, then it cannot neutralize all those toxins coming to it. And therefore, it will let go the toxins brought by the blood further along in the blood circulation, and these toxins will be then reach the brain, the kidneys, the muscles, the joints, and so forth, and they will deposit in these different organs, clog them, and make them ill. In fact, this is the basic idea in natural medicine is that if we become ill, it's because we accumulate too many toxins in our internal environment, in our body, in our organs. This is accumulation of toxins or toxics. That's the starting point of the majority of our illnesses. And the big organ which can neutralize and eliminate those toxins is the liver and the other excretory organs such as the kidney, the skin, the lung, and the intestines. So if we overeat or eat bad foods or polluted foods and these pollutants or toxics come into the blood, then it reaches the liver. So we can help the liver by making our intestine work better or sparing it of too much work, of too much food or toxins. It's a way of helping the liver.
Now, it's really unique when it comes to diet, which is one of those key things you're talking about right now, the kind of food that we eat. It's funny, there's an industry that to me has seemingly purposely confused everybody. One day something is fantastic for you, the next day, forget about it, just throw it out the window. But when you really take a look at the real I would call it logical reasoning behind diet, it's really not that hard to understand. And I'll just throw it out there after doing this show for years. It really emerges, just how simple it is to follow a real simple diet that just makes sense. And I will say that when it comes to YouTube, there is somebody out there I'll throw a shout out at. She has a YouTube channel called Fully Raw Christina. And she believes in trying to get as to the root of eating foods raw as you can get, eating in season. And everything she says to me really just makes a lot of sense. And when you take a look at your book, The Liver Detox, you're not too far off of what she's talking about either. You're talking about, for instance, one of the things you can eat as much as you want pretty much are things such as vegetables and fruits. I mean, because that's really the liver processes. So let's go ahead and talk about what you outline in your book there, starting with that and why the liver, says, hey, go ahead and bring as much of that in. Well, with this, kind of moderate that. Well, with this, try not to do really too much, but little bits at a time. Let's go ahead and kind of go down that list a little bit.
Yeah. About diet, the food we should eat is the food that nature gives us, and not that's what the industries give us, because they transform the food or they add things which are not good and so forth. We should really eat the
as
food
I like
that
to
nature...
say, if you have to read the ingredients, the nature didn't provide it to you.
Yeah. And as this lady said, one should also eat food which comes with the season. It changes every season. We eat different kind of foods. And also, it's better to eat foods which comes from the region where you live. I mean, if you live in the United States, food from the United States and not from South Africa or somewhere else. And so now, the bad foods we should avoid if we want to spare our liver are all the bad fats, saturated fatty acids, and that's margarine, many of them, oils which are heat pressed, and cooking with butter, that's terrible, cold cuts, sausages, very full of fat, frying a lot of food is very bad also, chips and so forth. That's about fats. That's the first thing. Eat much less fat, which be much better, and only natural fats, not too concentrated. Another thing to avoid is white sugar, because it's transformed in fat afterwards in the body. And white sugar is everywhere. Well, some people eat it in the form of chocolate, candies, ice cream, and so forth. But by the end of the day, it's a huge amount of white sugar, which in fact is not a food. We call it a food, but it's not. It's something produced by man, starting with its origin in food, but it's much too concentrated. Smoked foods like fish and so forth is not good. It's hard for the liver to neutralize. Foods full of additives, of food additives, I mean, to give a good color, to protect, give a nice texture. Many of those, not all, but many of those are chemicals which the liver will have to neutralize, and that's extra work for nothing. Many drugs, medicine. I'm not saying that one should never take medicine, but only when it's very, very necessary, because it's hard work for the liver to get rid of them. Alcohol is also important. 90% of the alcohol we drink is neutralized by the liver. So if someone is drinking alcohol every day, several times a day, his liver is really overworked and will not be able to neutralize this alcohol, but also neutralize toxins and produce glycogen and so forth, vitamins and so forth. So, shall I? Well, and excessive eating is also bad, because the more one eats, the more the liver has to work, and well, it's same as us. We are happy to work, but when it's too much, it's too much.
Absolutely. So if you're going to the buffet, just do little plates at a time, and don't try to go on. I see it's kind of funny when you go to those and you see people just pile on the food. It's like, how much you can go back for more? What are you doing here? And the next thing it's like Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is one of those that we seem to feel the indulgence of being able to stuff ourselves, and oh my goodness, it's just crazy. Now, is there ever a point that the liver gets to a point that it just can't repair itself anymore? And, what are some of the causes behind, or I guess, some of the causes or the causes behind that?
Well, when it's really too tight to work, it's too weak, then it stops working, and too many toxins are inside the liver cells, and they clog the liver, and therefore it starts to be in a very bad state, because the oxygen cannot come and feed, nourish the. Oxygen is something the cells need to function, so the cells will not function as well, and the toxins will attack the cells and destroy them or cause lesion, or then the cells will, to heal, will make scars, and then what happens is that finally the liver, when it tries to fight against those aggressions, transforms itself has a many tissues which becomes fiber. Instead of being a juicy kind of meat, well, it's full of fiber, which are hard. And, well, once the liver cannot work well enough, many functions, as it has so many functions, cannot be carried out, and other organs start to break down, and everything goes wrong. That's a very dramatic description, but if you ask me what happens when the worst comes to the worst.
Now, let's go ahead and put it this way now. For instance, what are the symptoms where your liver's being overloaded, it's feeling there's maybe a little bit too much toxicity, and basically you're getting to a point, maybe you start changing what you're doing because obviously it's not working too well for you?
Yeah. Well, one symptom is that the person has poor digestions, and especially difficulty to digest fats. Each time the person eats something which is very fatty, like cream or cheese or pastries or fried things, every time he has a great difficulty to digest, even pains in the stomach, and sometimes also nausea. Well, when it's systematic, then, what the person does, then it stops eating eggs or cheese because he has difficulty digesting it. That's one first series of symptoms. But the person can also have a feeling of being heavy around the belly, and as food is not well digested, a lot of gas is produced, there's bloating, the tongue becomes pasty, the breath is bad, the person loses appetite, and then more general, the person becomes quite tired, never enough energy, the person can become constipated, it have itching on the skin, and so forth, yeah. But the the difficulty to digest fats is maybe the clearest or the easiest symptom to detect.
Now, when you get to this point, perhaps it's certainly time to make some changes, and really the simplest changes, start changing your diet as we had suggested what you should do, kind of in the hierarchy. At this level, with, say, fruits and vegetables, we hear that a lot, just basically natural raw foods, perhaps. And then go down the list, a little bit less of this and not so much of that sort of a thing. But you also talk about particular, let's say, the subtitle of your book is Herbs and Massage. Now, let's talk a little bit about that. Now, sometimes people get crazy with herbs. They think, well, if this does this at this level, well, more is better. Well, the fact is you can cause just as many, if not more, problems using too much herbal supplementation, as you would at overeating or anything else.
Yeah, of course. Well, it's like with everything. If you are reasonable, it's good. If you go overboard, then it's bad. And it's the same with herbal remedies. They are very useful. They can help a lot. But if someone takes too many of them or too much of them, then things can go wrong, yeah. But let's talk about with reasonable people. And the medicinal plants can stimulate the liver to work better. The problem is that most people nowadays have a weak liver, it's overworked, and it doesn't work as much as it should. Well, when this kind of person takes the herbs which are active on the liver will be stimulated to work better. That is, it will produce more bile again for us to be able to digest. It will neutralize more toxins and so forth. But in order to be effective, one should take those plants 3 times a day, in morning, midday, and in the evening, so that 3 times a day the liver is stimulated and supported in its work by the plants. So there are many different kind of plants which can help. Some are very well known, like dandelion is a classical plant for the liver, or black radish, also rosemary. Rosemary, for example, can double the production of the bile of the liver, production of bile by the liver. So it shows it's not just we think it stimulates; it really stimulates. These plants can be used in the form of teas. The leaves are put into water and so forth. Teas. It can also be in capsules, or tablets, or tinctures. All those different forms are good. What I would recommend is that for the people who have never started, are maybe afraid to start with plants, is to start with one of them and test them, make experiences, and then they'll be more confident that they can use them without harm, because they are not harmful unless we exaggerate. So now that brings us to the question of dosage. How much of those plants should we take? Well, sometimes when you buy a tincture of a plant for the liver, it will say on the label, take 3 times 30 drops. But this is 3 times 30 drops of this tincture might be perfect for 50% of the population, but for 30% of the population, it will have no effect, and in fact, they should take more drops. But for the 20% left, 30 drops is much too much. They should take much less than that. So my way to deal with that is to encourage people to start with a low dose. So, for example, to go on with my example, instead of 3 times 30 drops, to take 3 times 5 drops the first day, 5 drops with water before the meal, and then to see what happens. At the worst, what can happen is that as the bile produced by the liver stimulates the intestinal transit, it has a laxative effect. The person might have a kind of diarrhea if it takes too much. But 3 times 5 drops is not too much. So if nothing changes on the level of the intestine, the people must take 3 times 10 drops. And after the next day, if nothing special has happened, 3 times 15, 20, 30, and go up until they can feel that there is quite a laxative effect. And that means that this is those they should follow, because in that situation, they are taking the most plants that the body can bear, support, and not more. If they take more, they will feel, they'll have diarrhea. And if they take less, the liver is not stimulated as much as it should. So it's very individual, but then the person can find the correct dose for himself by trial and error.
Oh, fascinating stuff. Now, what are some other things people can also consider doing as well? You talk about massage. What do you mean exactly? Do you kind of just rub the area where the liver's at, or how does that work?
Well, one kind of massage is to massage the liver, but the liver is under the ribs because it's very important. It has to be protected. It's protected under the ribs. So it's not possible to reach much of the liver, but if one massage along the ribs on the right side of the body, one can touch the liver, and by massaging it, making movements from turning movement on a point and then on another, it's possible to stimulate the liver. Of course, it's much easier to stimulate a muscle because it's in the open, one can reach it easily. The liver is a bit difficult to reach, but it is possible to massage. And there's another kind of massage, it's the reflexology massage. Under our feet are different zones which correspond to the different organs. And if we massage the region which is responsible for the liver, we can stimulate the liver. And, well, some people doubt it really works, but if you really massage the zone of the liver under your feet, if someone would do it for half an hour the first day, well, he'll see. He will have his intestines, which will start to work very quickly. The intestinal transit will be much quicker because of the stimulation of the liver, which will have produced more bile, which will stimulate the intestinal transit. So by massaging every day in a reasonable way, progressively more and longer, one can stimulate the liver without taking herbs, for example, or we can do both if we really want to support the liver.
Well, this is all it's so fascinating, to realize the simplicity of it all. And, if people would just kind of follow this instead of being confused about all this in the meantime, then they'd find themselves a lot further ahead.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the means to in natural medicine are always very easy. There's another one which is worth talking about in relation with the liver. It's a hot water bottle. It's a bottle in caoutchouc, and you fill it in with hot water from the tap, and you lay it on the liver. Well, on the side of the body where the liver is, just above the liver. And the heat from the hot water bottle will go into the liver, and when an organ becomes warmer, it becomes an increase in size, which means that more blood will come in it. And more blood means more energy, more work, so the liver will be working in a better way, more, just by the addition of heat. Well, it's a well-known remedy. Many people, when they can't digest, they put a hot water bottle on their liver, and it can help them digest more quickly. But if someone wants to detoxify his liver, he should do it every day. Follow for example, for 1 month, each day, twice, 20 minutes or half an hour. Well, some people will say I'm too busy, but when you are sitting reading, or for those who listen to television, or look at television, or those who listen to a radio program, you put a hot water bottle on your liver, and it will help your liver function better. And after a few weeks, well, you can observe that you digest better.
I want to thank you, first of all, for being on the program today to share your book, Liver Detox, Cleansing Through Diet, Herbs, and Massage. Is there a website people can find out more about how to reach you and how to get the book, things like that?
Yes, I have a personal website in which I present my books. There are many articles and videos. And the address of the website is www, then Christopher Vasey, in one word, .ch. Christopher Vasey, VASEI.ch. So there are really a lot of information of all kinds on the liver, but also on health in general, videos, and so forth. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you so much for joining us here on the program today. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's a pleasure for me too, and thank you for having invited me.
You bet. Well, thank you to listeners out there for joining us. You can also discover more at Beyond50Radio.com. That is the number 50. Do sign up for our weekly e-newsletter and keep up to date with what's going on in the world of Beyond 50 as well as our upcoming shows. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for tuning in. This is the Beyond 50 radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.